Are you a man looking for an intensive program to help you overcome your sexually addictive behaviors? Gateway to Freedom is your answer. Gateway to Freedom is a 3-day intensive workshop for men seeking to overcome sexually addictive behaviors. Whether married, single, or divorced, Gateway to Freedom will help men regain hope for a new life of purity and real contentment. The workshop is conducted by experts in the field of sexual addiction recovery. Your experts have over 35 years of combined experience. Read testimonials of workshop alumni at gatewaymen.com. Get all the info and register online at gatewaymen.com or call 1-800-49-PURITY.
Hi, my name is Jonathan, and I'm the founder of the Gateway to Freedom Workshop. I want to personally invite you to be part of our next workshop, coming up July 24th through the 26th in Colorado. So call us today at 1-800-49-PURITY or visit gatewaymen.com.
Welcome to Pure Sex Radio, training men, educating women. Are you ready to get real and start living each day in purity? This dynamic program is designed to educate, encourage, and equip listeners with the tools necessary for living a life of sexual purity. Pure Sex Radio brings you the best in mobile talk radio. Listen to real-life struggles, learn how to overcome lust, pornography, and sex addiction, and get serious about purity. Your hosts for Pure Sex Radio are Jonathan Doherty and Stephen Cervantes. Jonathan is the director of Be Broken Ministries and founder of the Gateway to Freedom Workshop for Men. Stephen is the founder of the Hope Counseling Center. Visit us online at puresexradio.com. And now, please welcome Jonathan and Stephen on Pure Sex Radio.
Good day, radio listeners. Welcome to this week's edition of the Pure Sex Radio broadcast. We're glad to have you with us. My name is Jonathan. I'm here with Stephen. Stephen, good to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, listeners, before we jump into this week's broadcast, we just want to let you know, as we do periodically, that this is a listener-supported broadcast. What this means is that the way these broadcasts get produced and distributed is through the generous donations of listeners like you. So if you have benefited from this program and you would like to see it continue to be aired, we would ask that you partner with us. And you can do that. It's a very simple thing to do. You can go to puresexradio.com and click on the donate button to learn about the ways that you can come alongside of us and partner with us in this mission. Well, Stephen, we are going to jump into the broadcast this week, and I'm just going to pass it off to you because we're going to, I guess, talk about the beautiful part of recovery.
Hey, wait a minute.
Sorry.
Don't be throwing that out there. I was saving that. I had a big lead into that line. That was too good to just roll off the cuff and go. So let me back up, folks. Unwind. Just go back to the beginning. We're glad you're here today to Pure Sex Radio. And so what I'd like to say is I was listening to Jonathan speak. I was sitting in the audience. It's fun to watch Jonathan, listen to Jonathan, and be part of, we are part of each other's growth process. I get to watch Jonathan grow. He gets to watch me grow. Lee shows up and talks. We get to watch Lee grow. And it's pretty exciting because we're all on different journeys. We're on the same journey, but in different places on the journey, and God is showing us different things. So I'm sitting in the back. I'm staff. I'm at the staff table in the back. I'm drinking coffee, kicking back. All the students are in front of me. Man, they're taking notes, and they're paying attention. Jonathan's smart. He has answers. I'm yawning, and if I'd smoked, I'd be smoking a cigarette, drinking coffee, looking at the comic section of the newspaper, waiting for him to stop his head. Anyway, right in the middle of this talk, Jonathan says these words. And I had to sit up straight and get my pen out, find a pen, piece of paper, write it down. I lose things if I don't capture them. So it's like, write them down. So these were the words that Jonathan said. he's talking about himself, and he's been working on integrity and growth and insight. And he says, yeah, it's the beautiful part of recovery. The beautiful part of recovery? Recovery is hard and bad, and you get roughed up, and people spit on you and laugh at you and mock you. You're in recovery. You got so bad, you have to be in recovery. You're like black sheep, get in the back. All the white sheep to the front, You're in recovery. You did something bad for a long time. And Jonathan says, the beautiful part of recovery. There's a beautiful part of recovery? Nobody ever talked about the beautiful part of recovery. Can recovery be beautiful? Beautiful recovery can be beautiful? Well, how can it be beautiful? What is he talking about? The beautiful part of recovery. So I have the good fortune of sitting in front of a microphone, and he's sitting across from me. So guess what I'm going to ask him to explain to us? The beautiful part of recovery. Can you please, Jonathan? There are people out there battered and banged on and labeled and second class, and they sneak into dark rooms with little groups of men that whisper in low tones and hope they're not made fun of in the church as the perverts. And you are talking about the beautiful part of recovery. Could you start to unpack that a little bit, please?
Well, I should preface whatever I'm going to say next with the truth that there's many, many times that I am speaking and I don't actually remember what I say. So
that's why I write them down.
This may be an exploration for both of us.
Oh, that's good.
No, I think, the overarching idea here, and this is something that was sort of an aha part of the journey for me too, because I came into recovery just like everybody else does. The idea that this is hard. You're carrying so much shame. It's embarrassing. What is this going to mean about a reputation? Am I always going to be labeled an addict? All these kind of things that I think they're just the natural entrance into recovery. Every person who's developed an addiction and then eventually comes into recovery and gets serious about recovery struggles with this very idea of there's such a it's interesting. There's a juxtaposition of all these feelings of negativity with this little tiny glimmer of hope that maybe this environment of recovery, maybe this process of recovery could create some change. But I don't think initially any of us ever think this is going to be beautiful, man.
No, that's why it's so shocking. But I want to play off what you just said, because every time a man comes to group, he leaves with a little hope. Mm-hmm. Every time a man comes to one of these men's training intensive weekends called Gateway to Freedom, they leave with hope. Mm-hmm. Right? And when you're in recovery, you are tied up in bondage.
Yeah.
And anybody offering you a little hope. And I think that's excellent. I think that's the starting place. But now you must be at the other end talking about the beautiful part.
Well, and that's just it. I want to, it's going to be kind of a challenge to explain this, because I do believe that the beautiful part of recovery isn't experienced in the first days of recovery. And so what I'm saying is, if you're coming into the recovery, you're garnering the courage to step forward and say, okay, I'm going to go to group. I'm going to step into this environment. I'm going to admit that I'm addicted and work on this. Then I want you to know that all of the negativity that you're feeling, you have to pass through that. So I'm not saying that what we're going to describe here today is going to eliminate that part of the process. So please don't.
No, and we don't want to.
Don't
either,
feel
right?
hopeless or discouraged if you're still in that very dark place of just kind of still struggling with, do I really want to engage this? And it feels so embarrassing, and I've got a lot of shame and all that. That's okay. That's all part of it.
Of the starting process. Yeah. That's right.
So I want people to know that. So the beautiful part, though, is and I wish I could give you a time frame, but I can't. But as you walk through this process, there's a transition that starts to take place where I think you start to realize that the journey you're on is taking you somewhere to where the emphasis is more on what you are becoming than it is on what you're trying to undo.
Okay, what I'm becoming more than the mess I made that I have to unpack and take all the pieces of the ugliness apart.
And so you have to, there's a lot that you have to undo. I mean, when you think about the mess, the web, the tangled mess that is addiction or is these strongholds and compulsions, there's all kinds of factors and variables that are intertwined in that. And so there is certainly, recovery is an undoing process of those. So there is an undoing aspect. But there comes this sort of, it's kind of, you hit this certain part of the continuum where a lot has been undone. You're dealing with past traumas and wounds, and you're finding some healing, some forgiveness, and you're combating these shame lies that you've struggled with all your life, and you're putting up boundaries around your access to pornography and other kinds of things, and so things are being undone. And I think what ends up happening too often is if you don't realize that there's so much more than that, you won't ever get to the beautiful part of recovery. Because you'll get so consumed with everything's just about getting quote unquote clean. And what I'm trying to submit to you today is that the beautiful part of recovery comes beyond cleanness. There's a lot of guys that get clean in recovery and they still are not in the beautiful part of recovery.
So I'm over here sketching while you're talking, so I'm going to feed something back to you and you tell me if I've got this right. I have 3 stages, okay? Stage 1, I'm calling ugly hope, because it's just ugly to go in recovery, but there's hope, right? And then as you stay in ugly hope and make some progress, then you get to the middle stage, which is feeling better management of myself. And then the last stage is free again. I was born free. I'm supposed to be free. I'm free again. And so do you think those 3 parts on this continuum, we start with some ugly hope, we get to feeling a little better, we get a little better management skills, more insight, and we stay there for a while, then we get to beautiful recovery or free again?
Yeah, and that's what I would absolutely agree with that. And I guess what I'm trying to say about the folks who get clean is they sort of get stuck in the cycle of simply trying to feel better, which is interesting because, I mean, it's good to feel better, right?
Yes.
The problem with that, though, is sometimes that's a little bit like the cycle of addiction. What am I trying to do? Feel better. But
I still feel bad or I mess up, but I'm trying to feel better. Is that what you're saying?
And all I'm saying is sometimes in recovery, all guys have done is switch the model. So the model over here in addiction is I feel bad, I want to feel better, I go do destructive things that for a moment make me feel better, unhealthy things. The model switches to recovery where they say, I don't want to do those destructive things anymore, and so I start doing different things that then do what? Cause me to feel better. And what I'm saying is you have to go beyond both of those models in order to get to what you're talking about here is free again, which is what I think is the beautiful part of recovery, because it's not just about going in the cycle of feel better, feel better, feel better. Mm-hmm. It's about saying there's something beyond even feeling better. There's something beyond even feeling clean, is this sense, and we'll get into a little bit about the idea that you have purpose, there's momentum, there's meaning to your life. There's good work for you to do that is built on the foundation of being clean, but the purpose isn't just to be clean.
So in that middle stage of feeling better, I get it. I'm not supposed to do that. I am supposed to do this. Mm-hmm. And I make myself do more of this. But it's sort of mechanical. It's behavioral. And yes, you feel better if you exercise a little bit. Or maybe I ate some more vegetables today. And so, hey, I feel better. I'm eating vegetables. I went for a walk. I feel better. But you're saying, but that's still not the big picture. That's not the final. That's just hold that place because there's another place coming that you're going to discover as you hold that place.
Yes, and I want to make it very clear here when I'm talking about the model of addiction and the model of recovery, and that this cycle of feel better. I want you to understand that there's a huge difference in what feel better feels like in addiction and feel better feels like in recovery.
Ooh, that's interesting.
They don't feel the same.
Well, explain that.
I'll give you an example from my own life, or I'll illustrate from my own life. When I was in my addiction, there was just kind of a heaviness and a darkness in my soul, and the secrecy and all of that. And so I would go back to my sexual behaviors for the pleasure that it would give me in the moment. So I would feel better in the sense of I'm having a pleasurable experience in using my sexuality in these unhealthy ways. The problem with that is the feel better there was so momentary, and it was very, I would call it shallow, meaning it was fleeting, and it was quickly followed up by a sense of shame and even greater heaviness.
But so you're saying a little bit of pleasure, there was a lot of darkness and confusion. Okay.
And so there was still a feeling better in the midst of that. Over here in recovery, feeling better looks like I made the right decision when faced with temptation, and there's a much deeper sense of satisfaction and contentment with that is not attached to shame. Shame does not follow up the feel better in recovery. So while they're both kind of a feel better,
I see.
What they actually feel like is very different.
Yeah, because the addicted part comes and goes and comes and goes and comes and goes all the time, right? In recovery, you get longer periods of sanity that feel better and like clarity and there's a lighter life. And
there's a deeper sense of feeling better. What I'm trying to show you is that down at the very bedrock, there hasn't been the total shift that needs to come in recovery, which is what I'm talking about as the beautiful part of recovery.
Okay.
And the shift is we move beyond ourselves. See, even in recovery, this idea of, hey, I want to make the right decision, healthy decision in order to feel better, there's still a sense of me. And I'm not saying it's an unhealthy sense of me, because we've talked in other broadcasts about self-care, and there's a need for that. What I'm saying, though, is some guys can get confused and think it's just all about me feeling better. And I'm just going to do it in healthy ways now instead of unhealthy ways. And I'm saying, you know what? There's a value to that. That's fine.
Oh, but that you're talking about a view. If my view is just for me to feel better and to stop doing stupid things, I could feel better and not do stupid things. But there's a bigger picture going on here, that there's a different, bigger view. And that's why you're saying is if it's still just about you and better and a good choice today, that's not bad. But that's not the real big better,
right.
Whatever
and
that is.
And I want the listeners to know that I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I mean, the things that we do in recovery to try to undo what we've been doing in addiction and the resulting good feelings that happen from that, because now we're doing something healthy, that's good. God wants us to have those feelings of it feels good to make the right decision. And I think God's wired us in such a way that our spirit feels lighter. We feel a sense of contentment and deep satisfaction when we make a right choice.
You know what's interesting about this discussion, because what you're saying is when you shut down the insanity and you get a little more clarity, and when you get a little more quiet and you can think better because you're not acting out your addiction, something else can start to rise up in that quieter, a little bit more restful, not stupid, not hiding and sneaking and shaming and breaking myself down. In that getting healthier, something else happens.
And here's the hard part, because the thing is when I talk about the beautiful part of recovery, or this idea of purpose and meaning and getting beyond ourselves, that creates a new challenge for people in recovery. Because for one thing, it takes a little bit of a sales job on my part to actually let them know that is the beautiful part of recovery. Because when you start saying, hey, you know what, I think it's time for you to actually share your story and invest the fullness of your brokenness into somebody else. And they go, that doesn't sound like beautiful. That doesn't sound like...
Oh, yeah, but you're also telling us part of your story and why this, sort of works. But I have to tell you, I'm reading this verse in Luke, and he's getting ready to send them out. See, Mark, Luke, yeah. And he says, okay, don't take much. You don't need much clothing. And I'm reading the Message version. And he says, they're saying, what should we take? And he says, you are the equipment. Mm-hmm. You're the equipment. Take very little. You're the equipment. And tell them about the kingdom. What does that mean? That means your life is the equipment. All the tools you need is your life. You don't have to have PhD. You don't have to have this Greek lexicon that's 3 feet thick. You don't have to take the equipment is your story.
Exactly.
And the kingdom. Okay, that's what the apostles need to be sent out with. So what are you telling us?
What I'm saying is when you start taking that journey beyond yourself in recovery, when you've gotten to a place of where really there's been a great sense of healing from all of the past issues, and there's been growth in the sense that you're on stable footing as far as your behaviors and your boundaries and those kind of things. This is where I think you have to face the next challenge, which is, do I want the best that recovery has to offer, or do I want to settle for just feeling good about myself? And what I'm saying is that I didn't realize this. This is one of the things I struggled with even when God was calling me into vocational ministry, because I was thinking, well, wait a second. Wait, I'm doing good. I mean, I've got my family back, and there's good things that are going on, and I'm even, quote, unquote, doing good. I started a little support group in my church, and I'm thinking that's it. And I will say that I think there's different degrees to which God calls us across this line. I'm not saying to you, listener, that every single person in recovery who is being challenged to go beyond themselves is necessarily going to step into vocational ministry. But I do think there's a point at which God is saying to us, if you want the best, if you want the beautiful part of recovery, the part of recovery that enriches you in ways that receiving can't, then you need to give away your story. You need to invest it in somebody else. You need to find those people that are in the darker parts of recovery, those early days where they need a sense of hope, and you need to reach out to them, and you need to pour your story into them. That's why it was sort of a shocking discovery, because I was thinking, isn't the beautiful part like receiving? Isn't it the beautiful part when I feel good? And I didn't realize the real
I just feel
beauty,
better. That's beautiful, to feel better.
The real beauty is when you start to realize that your life has a purpose and a meaning that goes beyond simply how you feel about yourself.
Yeah, but you know what? I can hear listeners out there saying, no, wait a minute. Just a minute, boys. You're telling me I'm feeling better, and now Jonathan is sending me out to the street to tell my story. I think there's a piece missing, because I think something happened to you. And I want you to talk about how could you, what shift occurred in you, just because you feel better, and now you go out and strengthen power with your story. I think there's also a shift in you, in manhood, in view of self, in the freedom you're given, in identity change. What happened to you? Then now you can go tell your story. Could you develop that piece?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I'd say the overarching issue there's two things. One is going through the process of truly healing from shame. Shame is a crippler when it comes to doing anything of effect beyond ourselves, because shame, at its root, shame will ultimately keep us totally and completely focused on ourselves, because it keeps us focused on all of our brokenness and focused on and then it creates all these delusional lies based on those areas of imperfection and weakness.
Then you have a broken system.
And so then usually in shame, we're going to pull in. We're not going to go out. We're going to pull in. We're going to hide. We're going to, oh my goodness, and just implode. The second thing, though, so one big piece was dealing with shame and realizing, listen, my Father in heaven says he loves me unconditionally, perfectly. There's nothing I could ever do to make him not love me. There's nothing I could ever do nobody can snatch me out of his hand. With that in mind, I realized it doesn't matter what you think of me. So
this is number two?
No, this is still number one about shame.
Oh, okay.
So I realized if he says you are my son in whom I'm well pleased.
You're
You're my beloved. Then I was like, well, if I tell you my story, what happens if you run out of the room screaming? I'm okay. He loves me.
I'm still loved.
And so that was a huge piece of just kind of creating a stability of foundation. But here's the second piece. I realized that this journey is not just about me being a sexual being. I realized this is about me growing into the fullness of manhood. It was about the whole man. And what I realized is that as I realized it's not just about this one dimension of my being, of sexual struggles, and I realized, man, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a friend, I'm a leader. All these kinds of things that were about being a whole man. Then I realized that when I was seeking to go out and invest in others and get beyond myself, it wasn't just to create one-dimensional relationships with other men and say, listen, our only connection is going to be your sexual struggles. I started to realize, wait, I have much more to offer to you, and you are much more than you think you are. You're not just a sexual struggler, a sexual
And you
addict.
have much to offer me too, right? I mean,
They
offer you.
Absolutely.
And
it's a two-way street.
Right, because they learn things on the journey, right? So let's go back, because I think this piece here is very powerful, because then it's the foundation upon which you can stand to tell your story. Mm-hmm. So you said, I used to repeat shame lies about myself: unworthy, not good enough, don't matter, not like other people. Am I close? Mm-hmm. Okay. Which is all false identity. You made up those lies, and you put them on yourself, and they continue as long as you repeat them every day with the dialogue of shame, right? So we talk to men at our weekends saying, look, you're never free with shame. You can never be free. You can never be whole. You can only be broken, because it's like get up and then beat yourself and knock yourself down. Then get up and beat yourself with shame and knock yourself down. You know, I'm sort of under the belief that men do not participate in church because of shame. Mm-hmm. Because if you really saw what was inside of me, I'm full of shame. And so I'm not going to pretend to be a leader. Right? So, I mean, evil has us right there. We are limited. If we run shame dialogue, we're limited. We're not free. And we're told we can be free in Christ.
And that's why it's so important to work on the shame stuff, because shame produces fear. Because what you're saying is absolutely right. When a guy is playing the shame tapes over and over and over again in his head, what happens when somebody comes up to him and maybe a bold person says, hey, would you be willing to help with some of our men's ministry stuff? He absolutely has a panic attack, because he is playing all the shame lies about why he's unworthy and why he's pathetic and why he's a loser and why he's a fraud and all of this. And then when somebody comes and actually tries to draw him out and saying, we want you to contribute your time and what you have to offer, he goes, no, you got the wrong guy. Because shame has crippled
Absolutely.
him.
So the second one is it's not just about being a broken sexual man, right? You're saying, one, I had to shut down the shame dialogue, which means then I had to develop a true identity of who I was. And I'm a spiritual being and a physical being and a sexual being. And so in the second part, you discovered your whole humanity, your whole manhood, including sexuality, mm-hmm. but not leaving out emotional development or physical development or spiritual development. So now when you go tell a story, you tell men two things. You don't, so when you say tell my story, it could be, well, go tell me you're a sex addict and you got better, okay? You got better.
No, tell them the full story.
No, the truth is, tell them that you found your true identity, and you can tell them what their true identity is. Mm-hmm. And not only say it one-dimensionally from like I'm a pastor or I'm in ministry, or no, from the wholeness of my manhood, even my sexual part, my physical part, my emotional part. I can talk from my whole system about my true identity. I can be a whole man with true identity. Mm-hmm. Whoa, who doesn't want to hear that story?
Well, and actually, that's where we got to close, because we're out of time. So if you want to share your story, we're here to listen to it, and we want to help you along in your journey of recovery. And we look forward to having you back here again next week on the Pure Sex Radio broadcast.
Pure Sex Radio is paid for by Be Broken Ministries. Visit us online at puresexradio.com.